funny, when I was talking to Jerome outside, we were talking about Aaron Zelinsky, who we've both dealt with.
A Mueller prosecutor.
And we just have like such different views of him, in terms of.
Go ahead.
Well, you go.
Well, I think Zelinsky's basically was a thug. He basically, his whole techniques, yawning, acting up, asking rapid-fire questions. I mean, I went in to cooperate, and I did not expect to be treated like a criminal. From the beginning, they were treating me like a criminal, first day even threatening to put me in prison for the rest of my life for memory mistakes. They allowed me to amend my testimony over and over again.
And you think what some would call the bad cop routine or hardball, you thought was unfairly adversarial,
yes,
was trying to break you.
And including the whole group. Jeannie Rhee was the same. Jeannie Rhee disparaged my religion, which I do not appreciate even today. I had no contact with Julian Assange. This was the only real breakup in the discussion I had.
But surely you're not suggesting that it is malpractice or illegal for Jeannie Rhee to, as you put it, allegedly talk about your religion. I mean, you've done that
with the
past president quite a bit. That's sort of what you're known for.
No, that's not fair on your part, Harry. The point is,
you're known as the founder of Birthrights, and we're not getting deep into it. I'm just saying, you and Jeannie Rhee, are you being judged by the same standard?
Show me the original 1961 birth certificate material from Hawaii. You can't do it.
As they say in the news business, we don't have time for that.
Oh yes, right. We don't have time for that.
No, well, go ahead.
What I would just say is the other day,
we don't have time for that.
The other day I was thinking. Zelinsky, my voluntary, asked me so many times about Trump Tower Moscow. It got to a point where when he brought it up again, like within an hour, I'm talking multiple times.
This was in what month?
In my voluntary in February of last year.
And in February, what kind of questions were they asking about Trump Tower Moscow?
What do you know about Trump Tower Moscow? You never heard anything about Trump Tower Moscow. Well, was anything talked about with Russian business, vis-a-vis Trump or anything like that? And I was irritated about things like that. I would tell you, in my experience, what they've asked me, they had reasons to ask me.
They had a foundation and a reason, and that's the job they're doing.
That's the job.
Mr. Caputo.
I had a different experience with Aaron Zelinsky. I think it's like 3 different people. I think my experience...
We had a negative view, we had a more legitimate view, and your view is...
I'm right in the middle. Because I think Aaron was probably just getting wound up when he let me go. He wasn't a pleasant person. I don't expect that to be the case in an interview with the special counsel. But at the same time, I've been, I raised money in a GoFundMe, and I've paid the legal fees of a lot of different people who have been in front of the special counsel, a lot. 4 different people who have been in front of the special counsel. One person in particular is Andrew Miller, who is challenging Miller versus the United States. The actual appointment of Robert Mueller, and his attorney spent time in front of Aaron Zelinsky, and they had a terribly negative time with him. Sounded a lot more like Dr. Corsi's experience than mine, and Sam's.
He really screamed at me was because I had announced on your show the week before that I was going to a voluntary interview.
Well, he got angry with me because I told him I was going to talk to the media.
The Mueller investigators were asking you to do what instead?
Don't talk to the media and the stakeout downstairs. I misunderstood him to think that to say that I should never talk to the media again. I said, so I have no First Amendment right? We broke. My attorney went out and talked to them. My attorney explained to me that Mr. Zelinsky and the FBI agents really didn't want anybody to talk in front of the media downstairs because the backdrop could show where they're located.
Look, I think because of my upbringing, I just think I had a better tool to be questioned by somebody like him.
Well, you're an attorney.
I'm an attorney too. We have, we're both similar. I think we went to yeshivas, things like that. He reminded me more of rapid fire. I'm being honest, with like a rabbi in the Talmud class. And
hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.